So we need to talk about Welsh bagpipes and about Welsh bagpiping. Yes, there are Welsh bagpipes. There have been throughout most of the history, certainly most of the history of bagpipes. There have been bagpipes in Wales, and people play bagpipes in Wales. Most of the Welsh bagpipe folk sessions I play on these. They get called the pastoral pipes these days, but these are early pattern union pipes, I guess. But yeah, union pipes, pastoral pipes. Great for playing Welsh session tunes on. These are Píobairí, single reed chanter Welsh bagpipes, and these are single drone, single reed. I guess you could call it a great pipe. It's not as great as some great pipes, but we'll come to this. These are more for like noisy music, dances outside, whatever, large rooms. So these are what I play Welsh folk tunes on. I like to play English tunes, I like to play Scots, I like to play Irish tunes, I like to play Welsh tunes, and so these are the tunes these are the pipes that I play Welsh tunes on predominantly. There are other pipes, I do use other pipes, but yeah, these are great pipes. These are all modern made pipes, and they're really good for playing the modern tunes on. But there is a history as well. There is a history of piping in Wales, and there's a history of bagpipes. Some designs particular to Wales, but mostly pipes in Wales were of designs that were common across Britain and sometimes across further afield in Europe. And so we shall come to some sources. Okay, so I'm just going to regurgitate what I've learned from other people, really. I'm going to post some videos about the history of bagpipes in the comments, and I shall post the names of people who've done a lot of work, who I kind of follow or have learned from in some way. I'll list those people now. John Tose is a great source and a really good piper, and I guess you call him a bit of an experimentalist, but he's also a bit of a historian. I think he studied at Bangor Prifysgol Bangor University. Ceri Matthews, very good piper, very knowledgeable, has done a lot of research. Jonathan Shoreland, again, piper. These people have all, I think they've all made pipes as well. They've all experimented. Peni Ediker, the late Chris McAuliffe as well. He obviously has coming from the Republic of Ireland, has an interest of Irish piping, but has a very broad interest in piping. And he's no longer with us now, but he has his Facebook page is up, and he's definitely worth looking at some of the things. He also has the Facebook group, the Irish War Pipes. Very interesting stuff. He was very knowledgeable and passionate piper. Rick Lyons, a Ferryside piper. He's been doing a lot. He plays uilleann pipes, and he's from Ferryside in South Wales, and he's been doing a lot of research as well. Very interesting. And Antwn and Hicks as well. And also in terms of groups and societies, the Bagpipe Society, always interesting to look at. Great sources of research and information, as well as Lowland Borders Piping Society, Northumbrian Piping Society. Obviously they relate more to English piping, and in the case of the LBPS, Scottish but that's kind of all out of the same pot. And also, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, I'm sure, Píobairí Uilleann, and the MPU. So that's the Irish Piping Society. They talk about the Uilleann pipes quite a lot, mostly with respect of Ireland, of course, but it's all interesting. So those are my loose collection of sources. So the history of piping in Wales. So piping in general, certainly in the British Isles, people playing bagpipes from the 13th, 14th, 15th century, perhaps. Nobody knows when the first pipes in Wales were played, of course, but there are some very early written accounts, and then there's art and there's carvings as well, of course. So a lot of the early pipes were shown as double chanter pipes. I don't have any double chanter pipes, but they're the ones that you have a stock with two chanters and you have drone. And in the UK they're often called Cornish bagpipes or English bagpipes, but they were definitely played in Wales. There's definitely artwork, there's definitely carvings. And St Giles Church in Wrexham, there are carvings of angels playing these pipes, and I think there are mentions elsewhere in different carvings in different churches or other pieces of artwork across Wales, as there are across England. And these are medieval bagpipes, and at this time there would have been courtly instruments that would have been played in courts, and they would have been played in celebrations and festivals, and they would have had quite a high status. And then through the ages the status of the piper became lower and lower, let's say, and eventually became the devil. The church did not get on with pipers in more recent history, but that was not just true in Wales, that was true across Europe, but it was also true in Wales. But we do have mentions of people playing pipes right up until recent history, of course. So the whole thing about the church and music in Wales, we'll come to music, piping dying out across the UK, and especially in Wales in this video. But in Wales in general, the folk music, this isn't uncommon across Europe, but in Wales this is particularly true. The church didn't like folk music, so a lot of the Welsh music tradition got absorbed into the church tradition, and so a lot of Welsh folk tunes became rewritten as hymns and kind of didn't really survive as folk music, which is a big shame. So a lot of people have found tunes, and there's a lot of Welsh folk music, and there's a really good video. I'm going to post a link in the description, but the video is called Welsh Trad Music, A Beginner's Guide, and it's I'll put the link in the description, but that is a really nice summary of Welsh folk music in general throughout the ages. But back to piping. So we had the early double chanter pipes, but then in more recent writings, through the ages, people have written about piping in Wales. Although Welsh history, bagpipes don't survive very well, and Wales was always kind of a bit of a rural backwater, let's say. And the further back in history you go, the more the people could write were elites, wealthy. So not a great deal gets written, and not many instruments survive. But there is some history, there is some archaeology, but there's a lot of writings about people using great pipes like this, or similar to this. these are modern, obviously. Single drone, it's a double reed, and I'll show you the reed. I'll just carefully extract it out of the stock. Here we go. That's double reed. Just put that back. So these are great pipe, conical bore, quite loud, definitely an outdoors instrument, definitely capable of being outdoors or in great halls or whatever. So these are single reed pipes. That is a single cane reed there. And they have a slightly different sound, much lower pitched, but they can be set up to be quite loud. Now, we do have archaeological finds of these. So this is a chanter from these pipes, but played just as a reed pipe with a wind cap. Noticeable about all these Welsh single reed pipes is they've got a horn, obviously is a kind of amplifier, I guess. So we have finds of these, and we have descriptions of, so this is a Píobairí hornpipe. We have descriptions of these being plugged into bags like a normal bagpipe, but we don't have any surviving ones, unfortunately. But we do have a description of farmers playing bagpipe versions of these. But there are definitely descriptions and artwork and even finds of these all over the place. So this is definitely a once popular Welsh folk instrument. Obviously, piping in Wales goes alongside harping and the bowed, fiddle harp, the crwth, and fiddles and whistles and what have you, which are all very important instruments, especially the harp, because the harping tradition survived in a continuous tradition through the ages and the piping didn't, unfortunately. But bagpipes were always very important in Welsh music, and these pipes, these great pipes and the Píobairí Uilleann were especially important. Now, as we get into the 18th and 19th century, we have contemporary writings of people playing union pipes. So apparently these were played in places, although some contemporary writings, some 19th century writings talk about Welsh playing Scottish great pipes. This is a modern great pipe. In the 19th century, in the early 19th century, in the late 18th century, great pipes like Scottish style ones would have had two drones. They either would have had two tenors or a tenor and a bass. We're not 100% sure. The famous Culloden pipes had two tenors, whereas a lot of the Irish war pipes, which are the related instruments in Ireland, had a bass and a tenor. So we can't say for sure, I don't think, that all Irish pipes had a bass and a tenor and all Scottish pipes had two tenors. But but they generally had two drones. And so people talked about playing Scottish great pipes in Wales. Whether they were similar, whether they were the same instrument, I'm not sure we can tell that. But so yeah, in the 19th century we had the great pipes, we had the union pipes. Now my hypothesis is that because, and I'll talk about English pipes in another video, because small pipes like these are small pipes, they're bellows driven like the union pipe. Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. For those who don't know, the union pipes are driven by bellows, I'll just find you the bellows. Here are the bellows. Here are the bellows. You strap them around your waist, strap your arm into them. If you've seen my videos, you'll see me playing them. So you also have small pipes, and you also have border pipes. If you can just give me a second. Excuse me. Here we go. So this is a. Don't fall out, Chanter. Oops. I'm not meant to do it quite like that. So these are border pipes. Again, bellows driven. They're called border pipes because they survived the 20th century in the borders of England and Scotland, along with the Northumbrian small pipes. Again, they survived the 20th century, so these are older style small pipes, I guess, but they survived the 20th century in the borders and the lowlands of Scotland again. But so these are all modern terms that we give them. But my hypothesis is because they were so popular in the 18th and 19th century in England, especially in the northern counties of England, that I think they would have been played in places in Wales. Who knows how commonly they were played in Wales and where exactly, but I suspect if they were played in counties like Leicestershire and Lincolnshire and Lancashire and Yorkshire that we know of, that they obviously were played further afield than that, they probably would have been played in Wales. Whether they were or not is kind of beside the point, because I like to play Welsh folk tunes on these pipes and they sound great for it. Yeah, that is my little talk about the history of piping in Wales. Oh yeah, so I must mention that Welsh pipes, especially the great pipes, they were very similar pipes to these all up and down the Atlantic coast. Yeah, and elsewhere in Europe, to be fair, but in particular, like the Spanish Atlantic coast and the French Atlantic coast, and notably Galicia and Brittany, of course, with their very strong connections to Wales. They all played similar pipes to this, and in Spain they're called the gaita, and in Brittany they're called the vers. So in recent times, these instruments have been imported into Wales to play Welsh pipe music on, and so they're all very similar, make a similar noise, and they have a similar range of notes on. So people use the gaita, people use the vers, and people use a more generic great pipe as well. And they all sound fantastic. And of course, in the modern age, these union pipes, when you take the foot joint off this chanter, kind of becomes modern Irish pipes. Of course, they're taking foot joints off these chanters, not just in Ireland, but I think predominantly it took off in Ireland, certainly. And from that you get chanters like this, which is a Uilleann chanter. Now these are obviously the Irish national instrument now, but interestingly these were played all over the north of England as well for a while, until they fell out of use. Now, why did pipes fall out of use in Wales, and why did the continuous tradition stop, and when? Interesting questions. I'm not sure I can tell you a definitive answer. Piping declined throughout Europe in the late 18th and 19th century and into the 20th century, just because there's a general lack of interest in playing them when the more modern violins and oboes became popular, because those instruments are a bit more versatile. They're lovely instruments, of course. So piping declined, but crucially, it didn't completely die out in some places, notably the north of England, Northumbria, and in Scotland, in an island. But it very nearly did die out everywhere, and given the repression of folk music by the church in Wales, it's hardly surprising that as piping in Europe declined generally, and folk music was kind of being suppressed across Wales actively, that a lot of piping died out. But of course, people were coming from Ireland into Wales quite a lot, and so who knows how long, when and where people were playing Irish pipes in Wales. Maybe that didn't ever quite die out, maybe it did, and maybe visitors from Ireland came over and just played pipes occasionally, but we certainly have Irish piping in Wales, as we do across England and Scotland, and indeed pretty much the entire world. But by the mid-19th century, piping was definitely on the decline. Possibly people were still playing like what you might call continuous piping traditions in Wales into the early 20th century. It's just really hard to know. Like, there's not going to be any records if people in small communities that, rural, isolated communities were playing pipes or not, and for how long. Similar case in northern England as well. It's very difficult to say, but at some point the continuous tradition of piping died out. And the pipers you would have seen would have been Scots, or would have been Irish people coming over. But there's in Ireland, folk music went into a decline. Folk music became not quite, maybe repressed, not quite repressed, but it certainly kind of only just held on by the skin of its teeth. And piping had to kind of be saved. There was a festival of piping in Ireland which brought all the pipers and makers together to try and not let the tradition die out, and it didn't, fortunately for all of us. But it wasn't just in Wales where it declined, it was all over the place. So the revival in the 60s, from the 50s, 60s, there was a revival of folk music across England and Ireland, and of course Wales. And so we have Welsh folk sessions, you have Welsh folk music, Welsh traditions, and we play traditional instruments alongside non-traditional instruments as well. So like Greek bouzoukis are played, and mandolins and things, and that's all quite normal. And so we play bagpipes in Welsh music, and the world is good. And I think I must shout out for Welsh History on YouTube. The Welsh Viking is very interesting because he does a lot of living history. He talks a bit about music, and it's all good context, especially in terms, from the Welsh history point of view, and also Cambrian Chronicles I find very interesting in terms of Welsh history. It doesn't tend to talk about music, but it is a nice and somewhat funny channel about medieval Welsh history. And I think that is all I've got for now. I'll probably do something on English piping at some point. I hope that wasn't too long. Okay, cheers.